This is Tim Storm, and you're in the world's wrestling epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the interactive interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com. Welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio, right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. Today we welcome an NWA World Heavyweight Champion. In fact, not an, but the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the one and only Tim Storm, who happens to be the world champion of a company undergoing a revival with new owners. Lots on the horizon here for the National Wrestling Alliance. Not something I've been able to say really since they were part of NWA TNA back in 2002, but it sounds like they really are moving upwards, onwards, and outwards. Should be interesting to see what Billy Corgan, the gentleman who almost purchased Impact Wrestling just a year ago, can do with the legendary name that is the NWA. I want to thank the NWA and Tim Storm for being part of this interview, and I hope everybody enjoys this interview right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Hey, this is Taya Valkyrie, and you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
If you want to conquer something, you must be ready for a war.
This is insane. Lucha Underground is out of this world. I've never seen anything like this.
Lucha Underground Season 3. New episode Wednesday at 8 p.m. on El Rey Network.
This is James Beard, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with me right now is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the one and only Tim Storm. Mr. Storm, are you with me?
Absolutely, James. Thanks for having me, and I really appreciate it.
I'm so happy to have you on, and I'm so happy to hear the news about the NWA. Obviously, you're one of the big guys that they're talking about right now, but all the talk is because there is new ownership in the NWA, and that ownership is headed up by Billy Corgan. What's going on with the NWA?
Well, I was a part of the prior administration. I'm a part of the new administration, and I'm really excited about the direction that the NWA is going. I know that Mr. Corgan came out, I think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, with a 20-year, basically laying out. He said he's got a 20-year plan. What I'm most impressed between Billy Corgan and Dave Lagana is that they have a true respect for the history of the NWA, which is, when I found out we had new ownership, that was my biggest concern. Was not necessarily direction and all of those kind of things, but I'm a true believer in what the NWA stands for, where it comes from, and all of the history of it. And both of those guys, both of those men, truly believe in it, and they want to preserve that legacy. And I'm on board.
Absolutely. And like I said, you're one of the guys that they're talking about when they're putting out pressers, obviously being the face of the name of the NWA as the World Heavyweight Champion. You are the one that they're talking about. I guess my question would be, how much of an honor is it to call yourself NWA World Heavyweight Champion?
Well, it is. I think I made the statement on a promo that's making the rounds right now that this truly is my mountaintop. I grew up an NWA fan, and I was very fortunate in the area of the United States that I grew up where I got a lot of wrestling on TV every weekend. But the NWA was where it was at for me, and I still look at that as probably the best time in wrestling history. I know there are other great eras, and a lot of younger people would see other eras as being the thing that drew them in. But the NWA and the talent roster that they had is what pulled me in. When I got into wrestling over 20 years ago, I didn't necessarily say, when I grow up, I want to be world champion like Ric Flair or like Harley Race, or like the Funks or Briscoe. I didn't get into it for that. It was just something I wanted. I'm passionate about it, and I wanted to do it. So reaching that is beyond any kind of goal or dream that I set 20-something years ago when I got into this. So, I made the statement that it truly is the most important thing that I've ever done in professional wrestling, and it is my mountaintop. It's the pinnacle of wrestling for me.
Absolutely, and I will plead a little bit of ignorance, even though I am a huge wrestling fan. I first saw you a little bit later in your career when you were working for TCW, Traditional Championship Wrestling. We'll talk more about that later, but my question for you was going to be, we had Rob Conway on when he was World Heavyweight Champion, and he said that the respect that he got when he was NWA Champion blew him away versus what he got prior to that. Do you experience that yourself? Do you get more respect now that you hold that title than you did prior?
Absolutely. I mean, without a doubt. And I can give you a couple of examples. One was earlier this year. I had a title defense in Japan, and the Japanese gentleman that was promoting the show, I came out to the same music that Harley Race used when he was world champion over there, and I guess they've used it for every champion since then. But he fully expected in Japan against a local, a guy who had done some New Japan, some Noah, had a name for himself over there. They truly expected, the fans to be more behind him, and it was strange coming through the curtain, the music playing. And I kind of expected to be booed when I stepped through the curtain. And I stepped through the curtain wearing the title, of course, and the Japanese crowd started chanting NWA. And, the respect that the title carries in Japan is amazing. In the States, there's no doubt that the NWA is not where it was 30 years ago. And I would argue that wrestling itself is not where it was 30 years ago. And it depends on your preference and styles and all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But I've had, and I don't want to name names, but I've had very well-known, very respected guys who've been in the business a long time, who, have done a lot of things, been on a lot of different organizations, have walked by and seen the title, laying on my bag as I'm getting dressed, and almost stop in awe, and and will say, "Is that really it? Is that it? Can I hold it? Can I touch it?" And it's to have that kind of respect. And I'll tell you, Rob Conway told me, Rob's a friend of mine, and I learned a lot from Rob. And he told me that, in a lot of cases, he would go somewhere and that the title, the NWA World Championship title in itself is the star. And that, it's kind of, it's funny, and it's also a little humbling. I have had people that have come up wanting to take a picture that said, I took a bus for 8 hours to get here, and and they'll take a picture, and then they'll say, "Can I take a picture just with the belt?" Because the belt, it really is a star. It's a legacy. It's history. It is wrestling history. It's the grandfather of every major title in the United States today. It really is legendary, and to be the man that holds that is beyond any dream that I ever had. I take it very seriously. I love the NWA. I'm passionate about it. It's what I am dedicated to at this point, and have been for the last 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. I know you've been traveling the roads with a friend of our show. Haven't talked to him recently, but James Beard, and I don't know if he's a part of what's going on right now, but that is my question. Is James Beard a part of what's going on with the NWA, or has he stepped outside with the new owners taking over?
Well, no, he has not stepped. He's not stepped out at all. James is in a lot of cases is my travel partner. We go a lot of places together. We travel together a lot. In a lot of cases, he's my roommate and all those kind of things. It's funny. I'm and I don't want to get into the old age thing, but it's funny. As long as I've been in this business, when I travel with James, I'm the young guy in the car. So I get, I do the drive, do the driving and all those kind of things. When we fly, it's all, it's always fun. But James he's something special. He's a special person. He's great at what he does, and I know he was inducted into or got an award last year at the Cauliflower Alley convention, and one of the statements that they made that really got my attention was that James Beard is the only referee in history that has legitimately worked referee for every major organization in America and Japan, and that's a pretty strong statement.
It is, absolutely. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet as well, by the way.
Yes, he is, without a doubt.
And
I mean,
you guys work together.
I call.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just was going to say I call James a friend, and in life and in this business, our circle of friends is always different sizes. From a safety reason, I keep mine fairly small, and James is a good friend, and I'm proud to be able to say that he is a friend of mine.
Awesome. You guys work together in TCW. We mentioned it a little earlier, and I really was a fan of it. In fact, I went to the trouble of getting the DirecTV Sports Pack just to get the channel to watch it, because I am not a WWE guy. As funny as it sounds to say, I like everything except WWE. Doesn't mean I disrespect their spot in the business. I just never was a big WWE guy. So I really liked what you guys were doing with the TCW brand, and I was unfortunately disappointed when it didn't really continue. I guess my thoughts were, what was your thoughts of TCW, and is that kind of a blueprint to what we might see with the NWA going forward?
The TCW was, and I found myself in 2 or 3 situations like this over the long term, is that when you're in the middle of it and you're doing TV and you're shooting shows and having matches and all of those kind of things that just go along with it, you kind of take things for granted, where you just think it's going to last forever, and you don't. I appreciated what we were doing, but now that I look back, I even more appreciate the quality of the matches, the quality of the production, and more than anything, the way it was run, the way it was managed, and the overall quality of the locker room. Our locker room was fantastic, and TCW was really good. The blueprint that it was set up on was truly designed to be more of an old school, a very physical style of wrestling. Not as many promos, not as much talk, more wrestling, and it was incredibly physical, which is fine because that's how I was trained and that's my preference. And that's not necessarily the style that we see, in a lot of places today. So it was unique, it was special. I thought it was an excellent product. I was very sorry to see it end. I'm still friends with and still work on a regular basis with a lot of those guys all over the country. And, and it truly was a nationwide roster. The guys pulled the best of, the people that are doing the talent scouting pulled the best of what they considered from all over the United States. And as far as it being a blueprint for the NWA, I don't think so. I think that in talking with and listening to different things from Billy Corgan and Dave Lagana, I think they're going to develop their own unique way of doing. I think I heard something today where Mr. Corgan said he intentionally set this up because he got frustrated with having to deal with 7 levels of management, so that the way he's going to set this up and manage it, this is going to be his baby. and the success or failure of it will be purely based on his ideas. Dealing with Dave Lagana, he has a vision for the way he wants this put out there, and it is uniquely theirs. And my first impression on this, as because I heard about this just like everybody else did, and my first impression was, oh no, new owners, and then I started feeling, okay, why is nothing happening? What's going on? When's something going to break? When's the? But I think we've been conditioned over the years by everything that we've seen. We want instant gratification, and we want even now, in wrestling, you'll see an angle develop in 6 weeks that should have taken 6 months. And what I'm most impressed with, and like I said, I didn't know how to read it when it began, but they are absolutely, Billy Corgan and Dave Lagana are in no hurry because they want to do it right. And they want to do a slow rollout so that everything that they commit to, they follow through on. And every product they put out there is a superior product. And I think, in retrospect now, because when I looked at it, again, it wasn't frustration. It was just like impatience. Now I look and go, you know what, that makes sense. how often do we see promotions thrown together? They have X number of dollars. They go out and recruit these guys. They run 3 shows and they're broke and it's gone. And everybody goes, oh, it was so good. Well, but there was no planning to it. They threw the money out there and it was gone. And the plan that the NWA is putting together now is just the opposite of that. It's going to be a slow rollout, and they're going to do things right. And the whole thing is, again, they're not going to make a statement about what they're going to do that they can't follow through on. And that's why I think that they've laid out on their own, they're a 20-year business plan, because they want long-term success. They don't want to be a flash in the pan that flashes, it's bright, it looks great, then it's gone. They want a long-lasting product. And ultimately what they want to do, and I guess I should start saying what we want to do, is we want to bring the NWA back to relevance like it was 20 years ago, because there was no better product and there still is no better quality name recognition than the National Wrestling Alliance. It truly is, one of the greatest companies to ever exist.
Absolutely. And we have so many different choices right now in wrestling, but they're harder to find. So I'm hoping that with the NWA, you guys are able to gradually build your way up. And we talked about TCW. It was hard to find. It was on a channel that I still couldn't name to you. It was a good channel, but
Yeah.
I don't even know what the name of the channel was. It was something I had to buy a pack for specifically to get. If you guys are able to get a decent TV deal down the road, and again, from Billy Corgan's perspective, he had his time dealing with the 7 levels of management, and I think he's probably more so referring to his debacle with Impact Wrestling and the attempt to purchase that product. So I think he's got the experience, and the fact that he's actually gone out of his way to try and do this after what happened with Impact and to keep trying to get involved in wrestling after that complete disaster, I actually have respect for him for doing it, because I don't think I would have had the patience to keep trying.
Well, and I think that's a reflection, of his love for the business. And, I heard him say, I think it was today on something I was listening to, but I heard him say today that he would never stand up and say, hey, I know everything about the wrestling business. But what he would stand up and say is he understands entertainment, and he also understands, he says through his musical connections, he has people out there that will listen to him that may not listen to anybody else. As far as they are in the process of making contact after contact after contact, and there are still people interested in professional wrestling. There are still people that want to see it. There's still people that want to be a part of it on TV. And with his connections in the entertainment business, he can get indoors that a lot of people couldn't get in.
Mm-hmm. Is it very cool for you, being at this stage of your career and now NWA World Champion, to log on and see your name on the headlines up there with all these guys you see on WWE TV every week? Is it very cool for you that a promo you cut for Championship Wrestling for Hollywood is headline news?
It is cool. I want to be careful personally of not comparing myself and what I've done and what I continue to try to do, with anybody else, because I am strictly focused on trying to make the NWA as successful as that can be. But also, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, it's pretty cool. From a guy who, from a long, long time, has loved professional wrestling and loved just about everything about it. To have an opportunity to be at the forefront is exciting. It's, there's not a better place for me to be. There's not. None exist. This is where I want to be, and I'm very fortunate that I'm getting that opportunity at this point.
When Tim Storm's not wrestling, what is Tim Storm? Does Tim Storm have a day job?
I do. Wow.
You don't have to say what it is if you don't want to. No.
I do. I
just figured you were a doctor because you're so well spoken, and I mean that as honestly as I can be.
I'm not near paid well enough to be a doctor. I'm actually I teach school, so
really?
I'm a school teacher. So yeah, I know, strange
awesome.
But true. Yeah, and I have
awesome.
I have done just about everything. I've run 3 different businesses. I've worked for a newspaper. I worked for a radio station. I was a pharmaceutical rep, but about this is my 10th year teaching, and as far as my passion in wrestling, it's perfect. I can travel every night if I need to. I can travel every weekend, and when I'm not traveling, I'm in the gym by 4 o'clock every day. And I got 3 months off in the summer. I travel. That's when I try to schedule my overseas trips. It's worked out really well.
That's excellent. That actually leads me to my last question, and I apologize for making it the last question, but I figure if you hang up on me, we got most of the interview done. So I mean this as politely as I can, but when I first saw you on TCW, my first thought was, who is this guy? Because you are such a polished performer. You had the it factor, the build that I could compare to Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, just this incredible physique.
Thank you.
And then I looked you up, and I see that you've been working for quite so long. Is your experience a positive or a negative?
Let me jump back to what you said, because this is a side story. Okay, this is the way my mind works. Got to be friends with Brian Blair, Killer Bees, and one day we were traveling to a show. We came into the airport together, got a car with Matt Riviera, and we were going to something in North Carolina. I can't remember what it was, and never really been around Brian a whole lot. Anyway, he kept telling me, they were best friends. He and Paul Orndorff were best friends. And he kept saying, you remind me so much of Paul. You remind me so much of Paul. Okay, this is one of the best honors. I was at a banquet, and Brian comes over and he goes, hey, let me take you over and introduce you to Paul. And I said, oh, that's great. I'd love to meet him. He walked over and he said, hey, Paul, I want you to meet the new Paul Orndorff. And my jaw, what a huge, huge compliment. So anyway, there's that. And then I think my experience is a plus. I know that at this point in my career, and this is the general statement, I've got more mileage. I've got more road in the rear view mirror than I do in the windshield. I know that. That doesn't mean that I'm coming into the road, but I got into wrestling at a fairly late age for most guys. I probably got in when most guys were getting out, and I think Ricky Steamboat used the term. He knew when his bump card was filled. You only have so many bumps in you, and he said he took a bump and he knew that he had just taken his last bump. I think that the fact that I played college football and I did everything competitive you can imagine I did, and then when I decided that I wanted to follow my passion, something I've always wanted to do, I think I had saved up quite a bit in the tank because I had never taken a bump. So while I think my experience helps me a lot, and I've been put in some fantastic situations, part of the greatness about this business is being smart. If you're smart, you sit and you keep your mouth shut and you listen. And I've had the opportunity to listen to some of what I consider some of the greatest minds and greatest wrestlers in the history of this business, and sit in a car with them and pick their brains and excuse me. There's not a lot of guys out there that left and God bless his soul, he's no longer living, but can sit in a car and ride with somebody on a regular basis that was at WrestleMania 1. That can ride with Skandar Akbar, a legend in the wrestling business and who did everything. With James Beard, who has worked everywhere. Matt Bourne was who I was referring to earlier, to sit with Buck Robley, to sit with Jake Roberts, to all of, those kind of people, Tim Brooks, but those guys who have been around forever, who, in my opinion, in a lot of cases, molded what the business was at that time. Gary Hart, and to just at least ask questions and pick their brain and ask them and get their input. And I'll tell you, even recently, guys like Lance Hoyt, and there was a traveling partner of mine, and to have a guy that can give you instant feedback after a match in the car or on the plane, whatever, that's invaluable. So to answer the question, that was the long version, I guess. To answer the question, I think my experience is absolutely a plus.
Absolutely.
There are very few, I'm not going to say there are none, but there are very few situations that I get into that I don't have an answer to in the ring.
That's excellent. By the way, Lance Hoyt is one of the most incredible talents out there, and we have a running gag. For whatever reason, I have him on the show every 5 years. I had him on in 05, and in 2010, and 2015. So we're about 3 years off from another ones.
You can't overdo it though. You can't,
No.
you can't overexpose. So I get that. Lance is a great guy, and I've been very, very fortunate to be friends with him and to pick his brain on a regular basis. So, super talented guy, and not a small guy either. That kind of helps.
No, he's a big dude. Yeah, he's incredible. And what he did in Japan with KES was just great. So, I mean, good for him. Is he doing okay, by the way? I know he was injured for a while.
He's doing great. He had back surgeries. He's made a full recovery. Matter of fact, I saw a video. Well, actually, it was just a little clip, but he's in Japan right now, and I think they just won those the IPW titles back in what turned into like a 3-team series of matches that just apparently stole the show, and he and Harry won those titles back, and they're destroying people again.
All right, excellent. Before I let you go, can I ask for one last favor from you?
Absolutely. I'll try to do it in one take.
Yeah, you know what it's going to be, don't you? It's going to be a station ID, just basically saying this is Tim Storm, and you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
I can do it.
All right, I'll count you down I'll do the Wayne's World countdown in 5, 4, 3, 2.
This is Tim Storm, and you're in the world's Wrestling Epicenter.